headaches. Alright, so I did a video on Gemini New Moon earlier, but now I'm going to do some astrological analysis for the various rising sun and moon signs. Maybe if you have nodal axis on Gemini Sag, you might want to check out all of these readings just to give you a understanding of different ways the energy plays out depending upon your elemental makeup. So this is the Gemini New Moon. Venus is heavy in the mix. Mars, of course. Mercury, Pluto, Jupiter. I mean, Uranus, it's all happening, always. But let's see how it's happening for you. So this one is for Gemini rising, sun, or moon.
There's no earthly way of knowing
He's singing.
which direction we
New
are
moon
going.
in Gemini here, conjunct Venus. True value, we're learning what true value is. Uranus and Taurus, the value structure is changing. The value of the self is changing. People are being forced to face their lack, and they're forced to question themselves whether they've been up or down. Are you actually assessing who you truly are, who you've been in relation, which is the work of Taurus. Taurus is a fixed earth. It's a process of creation. There's a lot of cultivating energy through Taurus. It's energy exchange with Scorpio. Power, transformation, transmutation, deep feelings, deep-seated feelings, often through wounds. And the blooming of what that creates is through us, but our personas, the ego we hold in relation to dynamics, the things we gravitate to and what gravitates to us, what gives validity of who we think we are, because we haven't gotten to the depths of the feeling, is brought to question quite often. And so the questions of worthiness come up, and obfuscation becomes an art, an unconscious art form. And the world has always given us these little credits to sacrifice our own power so that it may be. And we do that when we go to work. We do that in relation. We do that all the time, but we don't have to just settle on that as a reduction of potential, what the world can be. It's just an element of psyche. It's an awareness. You don't have to hold it above all other things, but to be conscious of it is good. And so consciousness expanding. That's Jupiter at 2 degrees Gemini here, trining Pluto retrograde at 2 degrees Aquarius. 1 degree 50 minutes, so it's basically 2 degrees. And we see Mercury, ruler of Gemini as well as Virgo, in a new phase conjunction with Jupiter, and a balsamic phase conjunction with the new moon. So getting the go-ahead, giving yourself the go-ahead to accept who you are, where you've been, as not being the definitive cast. It is just the mold from which you grow through, the soil which buried you in. Objective truths convenient lies the ignorance of our own process to learn. Experiences, we remember the moments that helped to shape us, good and bad, because those are the times we learned something. The depth of the learning is so deep that what we thought it was changes as we change, and that's how the world is too. Everything is. And so it forces us to remember that we're dynamic beings, we're not static casts, unless we claim that power, that tradition, that belief system, because it suits us in the world of all these potentials, and we need to find a focus, an anchor point for our awareness to gravitate towards, to be held by, to empower us. And we run into the shadows and the light, and we are deceived, betrayed, and we betray ourselves, and we judge, and we learn, essentially. So the compromise of your value because you were ignorant, it's not what you knew, it's how you knew. It's not what you know, it's how you use what you know. We learn things, and then we think that what we learn is the God, is the icon, is the standard, but it's actually the process of the learning which is important, because it allows you to see beyond the fallen sage, the absolution, to see that there are many absolutions, and we just don't have reference for it in reality, because it doesn't matter in the here and now. It only matters to us if we can find the value of what that is. So your denials have been your curing process. It has protected you, and it has limited you as well. And sometimes we've denied ourselves to protect others, and they do the same, and it's oftentimes mob rules, unconscious. So questioning why you hold values and what those values have brought to you and brought you to is a good practice anytime. It's the work of Gemini to get to the bottom of the emotional wounds in Scorpio, so that you can bring to form an authentic expression, which is the work of Scorpio in Capricorn, which squares back into this world, your relations, society, traditions, beliefs. We break down the edifice of the old structure so that we can see the purity of what is at the base. The roots are there. When the forest burns, the new seeds grow through all the ashes. And that's how the forest lives, immortal, death and rebirth. And that is our persona, is the sacrifice always, and this is why we can do beautiful things in the world, because we hold the persona in such high regard, because it is the closest thing conscious awareness in this moment in time can get to, by feeling the muse, by feeling the spirit, and by interacting with life and co-creating. But the persona is shaped two ways. It can be shaped more from the outside or more from the inside. And when you can get to the bottom of your wounds, or at least acknowledge them, bring them to the light of an awareness with no language, then you're more curious to find the language lived in the world, expressed through the medium of life. And then you resonate with it, and the gnosis comes to you because you learn the language internally through experience. And this is how the Saturnian influence squaring this new moon can help us, because it's the disillusionment of who you've been down to the bones. Piscean dream, there's a lot of shines and glistening things there, and there's a lot of fears, and there's a lot of unknowns, because it is the ineffable. And it's when you can settle into a sense of self based off of feeling your value, then you can restructure this skeleton, this ancestral wound, this lineage, this life, carry the torch forward, knowing that we were reborn every day. And some days the world shows us. Some days you have to show the world. Now, Black Moon Lilith is conjunct the South Node in Libra. And she is trining the new moon. So facing your fears by no longer repressing yourself, you can do that more easily, authentically, when you are in resonance with a sense of direction that benefits you, that honors your potential. To no longer compromise yourself for the myopia of others is a beautiful thing, because that opens you up to allowing the reality to fill in the void. And that's co-creation. And the process is going to be frightening, because you will be asked to hold your own fire and your own awareness. And the world's given us all these divisions and breaking us up into our feudalistic mind, so that death of absolution can come for all of us, and we'll be faced with the choice. Is human life, is living even worth it? Everything I believed and valued has been shown to be false. Do I realize that that's showing me myself, that I was false, that I have to find true value within, and then the language of truth finds resonance? The debate was a waste of time. It was a guilty pleasure. It was arguing about details for a question that never needed to be answered in the first place. So that's kind of how I'm reading this. So look to the North Node in Aries. Chiron there was conjunct Mars not too long ago, so it's been a heavy little time, physically, mentally, emotionally, and probably had a lot of experiences for people that brought that energy into reality for them. So reclaiming the parts of you denied, and the parts you didn't know existed because you either couldn't face it or you didn't understand the language to realize what it was saying, what these experiences were saying to you. And to use that purity of that fire to help guide you going forward. That's how you channel Mercury, Hermes Trismegistus, the hermetic dynamics of life. Awareness. You may not have the language, but you have the curiosity that brings you into the spirit growth, and that's awareness, essentially. You might be tested by the information, by the data, by the narrations, but you should question yourself. Then conspiracy of reality is secondary. Alright, so that was New Moon analysis for Gemini. Let's look at Libra.
When you were a baby in your crib, your father looked down at you. He had but one hope.
Alright, so New Moon in Gemini for Libra, Sun, Moon, Ascendant. Now if you look, it's in the house of God, the ninth house, natural Sagittarian energy. It is an expanse and to disillusion you. When you burn away the pyre, the fires, the flames tend to move, they bounce, they go, the embers float, and sometimes they set fire to things and move on. And so what are you setting fire to by following your north node? The relation to the other. It's just not the lover, the friend, the business partner, the open enemy, which is secretly the enemy within. But it's the other as in reality. We're all blessed with this curse of life. And it's up to us to determine what it is, and it oscillates between the chaos, the calm, so that we can understand the beauty of the chaos and know that nature is chaos, and that's how things operate. And we bring it to bear, and we balance it, and we have to cut out the depth of the breadth of the horizon. We have to focus it on what actually matters between us in life, and that comes through people most profoundly, and the people dynamics. This is how societies are kept in order, and it's through chaos, but we don't see the layers. They're always moving. So we cannot get stuck in the mind. That's why following the heart is the key to an individual sovereignty. That's how reciprocity is actually given, it is shown. But the showing is in the process, which is the transformative quincunx to Libra. So look to Taurus. Uranus is there. Venus is part of this new moon. She's exalted in both Libra and Taurus, and the roots are in Taurus. It's the embodiment of the spark of spirit from Aries carrying forward into fixed form. And that's for everyone. Forget about your air, your water, whatever, your everything. Sometimes you're more of one elemental archetype than another, a different expression. And it's all dependent upon us. You know, the world always will give us situations and experiences, and our ignorance is the gift that costs a sense of self a lot of times. You know, Saturn is exalted in Libra. The truth is what you are capable of experiencing and feeling. And you will go through many truths in life so that you can understand that you're dynamic, and the instinctual power of the spirit of life in the moment, the felt moment of experience. That kind of power can be harnessed anytime. And it's best when you can harness it through authentic means. So what breaks you out of the third house habitual belief system routines? And Taurus is your transformation, and Taurus works through you, through relation. And Taurus is seeking the value of the belief in a practical, applicable way. How can you actually put that into life? Well, if you can think about it, if you're conceiving it, then it's probably relational to past dynamics. You don't think about the end result so much as the here now, and then your process becomes the result. So just student mind will greatly aid us in these times. I have North Node in Libra. I'm a Taurus Sun, Gemini Moon. So the compromise, we always compromise, but we compromise, we use, the psyche within us needs expression, so we attract and are attracted to situations which will give a proper, honest place for that spirit to be circuited between us and this world and others. So your epigenetics, surroundings, the information you take in, the communications we speak, the entrainment to old roots, to old structure, to the flows of life. We are hypnotized. We have to hypnotize ourselves. The only way I know how to do that is to try and reduce the noise. Fall into creative flows, to get in tune with a sense of spirit I can't really put a word to, a name to. It comes upon me. And it's through creativity, it's through nature, it's through living life, actually embodying life, not embodying the automaton life where I've got to pay the bills, I've got to get to this class, I've got to get to this seminar, I've got to run to the gas station and pick up whatever, I've got to bring the kids to school, I've got to, that's the wake of life. It's pulling you in the rhythms. So when you got to do that, then you find the other times, the silent times, when you can be in reflection with reality, which is nature essentially. It's not trying to co-opt or coerce you into anything but a natural expression of life. When you're in creation, creative flows, and you're creating, then you fall into that energy as well. If you exercise, yoga, whatever, traveling could be big. Writing. Write some poetry, send a letter, maybe do some burning rituals, or take advantage of the Pluto retrograde energies, trining into the Libra point, and also trining Jupiter, so that's a secret grand air trine there. Replay history in your mind. Realize you aren't who you were, you're always growing, and you just didn't realize it because a lot of times this world grows at its own pace and other people are on their own processes. So when you change, that's an indication that the world's changing, that other people will change too, and they need to see your leadership in that ability. You're bringing a balanced expression of self to form in these times. And if you find it's an unbalanced source, then the nutrition of the mind and the spirit is fucking you up. You gotta figure out, what are you taking in? What narrations, what foods, what surroundings, whose energy is influencing you? How do you change that? How do you do it optimally? Optimally is something that will ensure your future growth and sustain and nourish your spirit as you are now, knowing that you're always growing. And when you do that, you subconsciously, you send the message and you're showing others how to be. And even if they're your enemy, they will learn greatly from that and be honored, even though they cannot maybe find the words to understand it. It will be a feeling. Alright, so that's an analysis for the Gemini New Moon for Libra energies. Now let's look to Aquarius. So Gemini New Moon for Aquarius. Pluto retrograde right there. Saturnian grind of Aquarius. Father formed time, gave the structure from which we could fight, battle, and rise and unify. And then comes time for the bird to fly, and it's got to jump out of the nest. And this is the sacrifice of the self for a conviction, or it could be. Or maybe you've become immortal and you've realized you've already sacrificed yourself many times in that square to Scorpio. You've embodied a lot of misery. You've embodied a lot of joy, a lot of pleasure and pain. Some of it was for you, other times it was for other people. The work of Aquarius, what drives the mind, is something deep within, feeling deep within. It might not even be yours, it might be your ancestors, it might be part of the world, spirit. Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. Uranus is in Taurus. Uranus is Prometheus, the light bearer, the higher octave of Gemini. Uranus is the father of Saturn. Gaia and Uranus brought form to matter. Not just M-A-T-T-R-E-R as in material stuff, but what matters. You know, what is the value of this? So working through your emotional flows. You know, Gemini is the 12th house to Cancer. It is the unconscious. So Gemini gets caught in the mind. I'm a Gemini moon. I mean, all people do from time to time, but particularly air signs, particularly Moon or Mercury. And it's because there's a feeling deep within us. Oftentimes a wound. Uranus in evolutionary astrology represents mental wounding. It is the eternal memory. It's the Akashic. It's the reason for life itself, for creation. Aquarius Leo, that axis, is the creative purity at maturation, in maturation, the lemonscape. As the circle, you blow a smoke ring and it will eventually start to fold into the lemonscape and collapse on itself. Death and rebirth cycles, you know, so the emotional flows that we are becoming aware of through this new moon in Gemini conjunct Venus, we're seeing that our compromises and the compromisation of ourselves as an individual, or of another's beliefs or their individuality, has not really, it benefited us maybe for a time, but to hold on to statics in this ever-flowing dynamic is a sacrifice. You have to sacrifice yourself for icon, or you cultivate the icon within yourself and you bring that into authentic expression. So your compromises have been realized or are being realized the past few years, but especially this past Venus cycle where she was retrograde in Leo, opposing you. So you might have felt energies where there was an imbalance, where you felt imbalanced, and it wasn't necessarily from internal means, but from the other, from the reflection, from the illusion of consensus reality narrations, expectations, obligations, and pride, and the value of tradition, and the authenticity of change, you know. True change, you know, it happens. You look at history, you see when revolutions happen and there's so much change, but the majority of revolutions were co-opted, hijacked, steered, created. The truth is we have to have the rebellion of the self change within ourselves, but know that that's part of the process, so that we can bring heaven to earth through our deeds, through our actions, through being. And at this time, I feel it doesn't it's not as profound as we think. You know, we see all these stories in movies where it's like people are trying to save the world, but you save the world by saving yourself, and then other people see the individuality, the individuation of a conscious awareness coming into relation, and they will say, I want to be like that. That's unity. So the diversity of the individual brings unity of disparate energies, different perspectives, finding the common goal from which to lay a new foundation for an emerging world. We can get hung up on the dichotomy of what's dying and what's being reborn. We can say, I don't like what's being reborn there. I don't like what's dying here, or I like that. How can I create something new? What within me, what absolution can die? How can I burn through the ego so that I can rise above the clouds, see the stars, feel the energy for myself, and live that without expectation, just knowing that tradition is carried forward through a pioneering expression of authenticity, not through cloistered guarding of truths that need to be kept alive because they aren't actually truths. So we see the world folding in on itself, beliefs, the feudalism of spirit coming through conscious awareness, and we're falling into the resonance of our elemental expressions. We see this group, we want to be part of that. We see that movement, we want to be part of that. But what's the movement of the self is underneath all of that. So if you can get to what that is, or a sense of that as your footing, then you'll be in flow with your own dynamic progressions. That's how you embody Uranus and Taurus. That's how you bring that forward, because South Node of Uranus is in Gemini right now. That's where this new moon is. It's a range between 13 and 18 degrees, I believe. So South Node is, if you look at history and you look at the cycles of Uranus transits there, you'll see some disturbing things. But Or's law dictates where your energy goes, or validates. Where your attention goes, energy flows. So you will discover those beautiful things as well, but it's where you can put your energy. So pulling up the ancestors, and more importantly the spirit of life itself and creativity, and that's always going to be authentic. And you can bring that forward, and you can be part of the leadership of this pioneering spirit, this Promethean emergence. You and Leo have that ability more so than anyone else at this time, I feel. But it is powerful on the fixed signs. Heading into the age of Aquarius, some of us are there already. Alright, so that was a breakdown for Gemini New Moon for Aquarius. And the air signs.